Hello, Namaskar, Vanakkam. In today's explanation video, we are going to be doing Julius Caesar Act 4, Scene 1. It's not a very long scene, but it is really the beginning of the conflict in terms of the battle. We saw in Act 3, Scene 3, civil war breaking out after Mark Antony manages to convince the people of Rome about what he had to say about Julius Caesar. He managed to convince them that wrong had been done to Caesar. So now from Act 4 till the end of Act 5, what we will see is largely the battle taking place. Okay, so let's get started with it without wasting any time. Okay, so keep your book with you, keep your notebook with you so that you can take down the notes of all my explanation points. Okay. Okay, so Act 4, Scene 1, which takes place in a house in Rome. Mark Antony, Octavius, and Lepidus, they are seated at a table. They are part of this particular scene. So Antony says, "These many then shall die, their names are pricked." Now, what does he mean? When he says are pricked, it means that their names are marked. Please keep noting it down. I know you would be having some textbook in which the word meanings would be given, but while I'm teaching, it helps you to kind of keep marking because it will just get recorded in your brain that much better. And that's precisely what you want, isn't it? So he says that these many men will then be killed, and we have marked their names. This is what Mark Antony does. Basically, what they're doing is to make a list of people who they are condemning to death. Means that these are the people who we would kill. These are from the enemy camp. Octavius says to Lepidus, he's saying this to Lepidus, "Your brother too must die. Consent you, Lepidus?" So he says that your brother also must die, Lepidus. Do you agree? Consent means, do you agree? He says, "I agree." Okay, now who is this brother who is being spoken about? The brother of Lepidus. Now, the brother of Lepidus is a guy called Paulus, Paulus, who is a character who is supposed to be the brother of Lepidus, but he does not appear in the play Julius Caesar, but his name comes in historical research. That's how we know of his name. Okay, so Octavius says, put a mark next to his name to Antony, because Lepidus has agreed. In case he had not agreed, then they would have had some kind of an argument, some kind of a discussion. But since Lepidus says, "I agree," Octavius says, prick him down means mark his name in the list, Antony. Lepidus then says, "However, upon condition that Publius shall not live, who is your sister's son, Mark Antony." So now Lepidus says that he shall not live. Fine, no problem. However, the condition is that your sister's son, whose name is Publius, also shall be killed. And he's saying this to Mark Antony. Mark Antony says, he shall not live. Agreed, he will also be killed. Look, with a spot, I damn him. Means, spot means I am kind of putting a stain against his name. You know, it's a spot means a mark which has been put on the list. I condemn him. Damn him means I am condemning him to death. That is, he will be killed. But Lepidus, you go to Caesar's house. I want you to go to Caesar's home. Fetch the will. The will is that legal document about which he had spoken in Act 3, Scene 2. You would recall. So he says, fetch the will hither. Hither means here. And we shall determine how to cut off some charges in legacies. Now, what is Antony speaking about here? Now, this can come as a reference to context question, because if you give a question like this, you can be asked about what is being spoken. You can be asked about the will, the discussion about the will which took place in Act 3, Scene 2. All the details you can be asked about, right? And you can be asked questions about the relationship between Antony and Lepidus. Later on in the scene, we see what kind of an opinion does Mark Antony have about Lepidus. All those questions. So while I'm explaining to you, I'm also telling you the kind of questions that can be framed, because that will be the batch of 2025, is going to be the first batch which is going to take Julius Caesar in the board examination. So it is actually you're starting on a clean slate. So you need to have an idea about what kind of questions can possibly be asked. So do make a note. So he says, fetch the will here, and we shall decide. Determine means we shall decide. We shall decide how to cut off, means how to reduce, how to, because he has made very pompous statements in Act 3, Scene 2 about what all will Caesar have left for each person in Rome, right? So he says we shall decide how to reduce the payments promised to the people in Caesar's will. Okay, that is cut off some charge in legacies. So it's like, you know, all these political parties in the manifesto or before elections, they say, we will give you this if we are elected to power. If we form the government, we will do this. Once they come to power, then they say, no, but conditions apply. The condition is that only if your annual income is below this many rupees in a month, in a year, only then this condition would apply. That they would not have said before the elections. So this is, I mean, when I was reading it, when I was preparing for it, I realized this is so much like present day politics. Lepidus says, what shall I find you there? So here, so he says, will you be here when I return? That is, when I come back with the will I find you here? Octavius says, either here or at the Capitol. Either here or at the Capitol, we will be there. And Lepidus exits the scene. Now these two gentlemen, that is Antony and Octavius, discuss about Lepidus. Antony says, this is a slight, unmeritable man, meet to be sent on errands. Is it fit, the threefold word divided, he should stand one of the three to share it? Again, an important passage which can be asked in the examination, because again, see, why I'm pointing out certain passages, because certain passages, see, there are three ways in which the questions can be asked. One, that particular passage should have some element on which you can be asked a question about. Okay, it should have some element about which can connect to what has happened before, either in the same scene or in a previous scene, so that you can be asked to link to that, or something which unfolds later on in the scene. So these kind of passages are what are exam material, which can be asked in the examination. So he says, this is a slight unmeritable man, means he is an unimportant man. He is not an important person. Okay, a man without merit. This is a slight unmeritable man. He's an unimportant man, a man without merit, means without any kind of qualities. Okay, without merit, without any quality. He is fit. Meet means he is fit only to be sent on errands. What is errands? Errands is something which you have to collect or deliver. Okay, and something which is not a very important kind of a job. So he says, is it fitting? Is it kind of appropriate that of the three rulers of the world, that is Octavius, Mark Antony, and Lepidus, that is of the three, because they are deciding who will be killed and who shall be alive. So which means the three of them are like the rulers. So he says, of the three rulers of the world, that's how pompous they feel, he should be one of them. Shouldn't it be just the two of us? Why should it also be Lepidus, is what Mark Antony is questioning. So he should stand one of the three to share it. So is it really good enough? Is he really important enough to be kind of sharing the thing? 1 second. It's a remote. Okay. Octavius says, so you taught him and took his voice, who should be pricked to die in our black sentence and proscription. Now, Octavius says, so this is what you thought of him. Okay, this is what you thought of him. And yet, so this is what you thought of him. And yet, you took his opinion on who should be marked to die. If this is what you think of him, that he is not important enough, yet you took his opinion on who should be alive and who should be dead in our black sentence and proscription. Proscription and black sentence is the list of death sentences. That is, who shall be killed and who shall be alive. Understood till here? Good. Understood till here? Then say yes, understood. Antony says, Octavius, I have seen more days than you, and though we lay these honors on this man to ease ourselves of divers slanderous loads, he shall but bear them as the ass bears gold, to groan and sweat under the business, either led or driven, as we point the way. Now, what is it talking about? Again, a long passage could be asked, because though Lepidus is a minor character, but in the way Antony speaks about Lepidus, tells us more about Antony himself than about Lepidus. Please keep that in mind. Whenever the major characters are talking about a minor character, it's not the minor character who is important from an exam point of view. It is the major character, because if I say something, say, let's say I am praising someone, right? The person who I am praising is okay, can be asked about, but it also shows something about my character. Or if I'm criticizing someone, it also shows something about my character. So please bear that in mind. So Antony says to Octavius that I have lived longer than you. I have seen more days than you means I have lived longer than you. And though we lay these honors on this man, and though we are kind of giving importance to this man, we are treating him, as if he's an important kind of person. The real reason is means to get rid ourselves, that we should not suffer from the burden of the wrongs that we are going to do, because we are going to kill XYZ. That will be a burden on our conscience. That will be a burden on our soul. So this is an attempt, because we are seeking his permission. We are seeking his approval. So that burden of the guilt will be on his conscience. So see, the first thing that you need to remember here is that Mark Antony we already saw that in Act 3, Scene 2. He's a clever, manipulative, and let's say maybe a bit of a devious kind of a mind. So he says it is to get rid of the burden of the wrongs that we are now going to commit. Understood? He says that that is Lepidus will carry these honors. He shall but bear them as the ass. Ass means the donkey. So he says, just like the donkey carries gold, right? While it is groaning. Groaning means even if it's tired, kind of thing. It is kind of groaning under the weight of the gold. And it is also sweating under the burden of carrying the gold. Okay. Either led or pushed as we direct him the way he should go. That we are directing, go here, do this, do that, but he will carry the burden of taking all those important decisions of the persons who will be on the death sentence, on the proscription, will not be on our conscience. So he's thinking of it like that. And having brought our treasure where we will, then take we down his load and turn him off, like to the empty ass, to shake his ears and graze in common. So he says, once he has brought our treasure where we want. Now, treasure does not necessarily mean that he's going to get them gold. He's saying that, once we have kind of, if I have to speak in Hindi, agar usse kaam nikalwa liya hai to, once he has done whatever we want to do, because he's talking in the metaphor, using the metaphor of, actually not a metaphor, it's a simile, because he's used the word as. So using the simile, he's kind of continuing with it. So he says, once he has brought our treasure where we want, then we will take down his load and put him out to pasture. That is, we will ask him to graze like an unburdened donkey. Empty ass means unburdened, without any burden. Okay, unburdened donkey, to shake his ears and let him graze in the public land. Commons means public land. That is the common grazing area. Octavius says, so basically, ताकि हमारे मन पर किसी तरह का बोझ ना रहे, if I have to say it in a nutshell. So Octavius says, you may do your will, but he's a tried and valiant soldier. Now, Octavius has worked with Lepidus, so he's kind of trying to defend. He does not quite approve of the rather condescending and not a very charitable way of speaking about Lepidus that Antony is indulging in. So he says, you can do whatever you want to do, but I must tell you that he is a tried, means he is an experienced and a very brave soldier. Okay. So Antony says, so is my horse. Even my horse is an experienced and a brave one, Octavius. And for that, I do appoint him the store of provender. So he says, my horse is also the same, Octavius. And so I appoint means, so I provide him with plenty of food. Store of provender means plenty of food. So I provide him with plenty of food. My horse is a creature. It is a creature that I teach to fight. So he says, my horse is a creature that I teach to fight, how to turn, to wind, to stop, to run directly on. To wind means how to turn, to wind, turn, to stop, and to change direction. How to stop and how to run straight. How to run straight. Okay. So I teach him to fight, how to turn and change direction. To win means that how to turn and change direction, to stop or to run directly. His corporal motion, that is his physical movements. His physical movements are governed by my spirit, means that they are controlled by my spirit. How he moves physically is decided by me. Okay. Lepidus is similar. He's saying that in some taste is Lepidus, but so that Lepidus is similar to that extent. He's similar to some degree. He must be taught, he must be trained, and he must be bid go forth means he must be ordered to do this task. Okay, so that is how it should be. So he says a barren spirited fellow, one that feeds on objects, odds, and imitation. So he says he's a dull. Barren spirited means he's a dull fellow, one that feeds, who has a taste for artificialities and fashions that are no longer in vogue. That is, he has a taste for artificialities, that is superficial kind of behavior, or any kind of fashion. It could be in terms of jewelry, it could be in terms of clothes, it could be in terms of footwear, whatever, which are no longer fashionable, which means that he's out of fashion. What he dresses like or what he behaves like, it's all very out of fashion, and other men made use of much earlier, and now they are considered stale. That is, it is considered out of fashion. It's no longer in fashion. But those kind of things begin his fashion, means he considers them fashionable. What has now considered stale by other people because of them being using it, he considers them newly in fashion. So he says, do not talk of him but as a property. Now he's being very, very insulting out here. This particular line is very important, and you can use that also as a keyword when you are talking about Mark Antony's character. Okay, so he says, considering looking at Lepidus only as a property. So he says, do not talk about him except as a possession, as though something which they possess, they own. Okay, Hindi mein bole to sampati. So he says, now Octavius, listen great things. Brutus and Cassius are levying power. So he says, now Octavius, listen to some more important things. Okay, great things, which means that abhi tak whatever they have been speaking about is unimportant. He's reinforcing that. So he says, now listen to important things. The important thing is that Brutus and Cassius are building armies. Levying powers means they are building armies. They are building, levying powers means they are building armies. We must straight make head. Therefore, let our alliance be combined. So he says, we must quickly make head means we must quickly build an army too. Make head means we must also build an army. Therefore, so we should combine our strength. Alliance be combined means let's combine our strength, confirm our best friends made, confirm who our best friends are, confirm who we can trust on. Okay, and our means stretched, that is, we prepare our resources fully. That's, in terms of weaponry, in terms of artillery, etc., etc. And let us presently go sit in council. Let us go into a council meeting right now. Presently means right now. How covert matters may be best disclosed and open perils surest answered. So he says that, and figure out the best way to discover secret plans. Covert matters means secret plans. Let's discover the secret plans that our enemy forces may be having, and how to respond, and open perils surest answer. How to answer, how to kind of respond. Okay, how to respond to the open dangers. Perils means dangers. So whatever dangers are there, how to respond to them, let's figure out by going to the council meeting. Octavius says, let us do so, for we are at the stake. Now this is an important line. So he says, let us do that, we are at the stake. I'll tell you what the stake is. And weighed about with many enemies. Because we are at the stake and we are surrounded by many enemies led by Brutus and Cassius, and bayed about. Okay, and bayed about. Stake and bayed, I'll just tell you. Some people and some that smile have in their hearts, I fear, millions of mischief. So he says that some people who may seem friendly, smile in their hearts. Outwardly, they may seem very friendly. Okay, but I fear they are the ones who mean to harm us, because they are having millions of mischiefs in them, that they are the ones who may harm us, however, even though they may be having a smile on their faces. Now, the stake and bayed, what does it mean? Because in the Elizabethan era, there used to be a sport. They used to play a very gory kind of a game, in which a bear as in a bhalu, a bear would be tied to a piece of wood, a stake, and it would be circled by howling dogs, hunter dogs. Okay, and people would enjoy the plight of that bear, which can't do anything because it's tied, and there are these hunter dogs which are howling at it, really scaring it. So that used to be the game. So he's kind of comparing themselves to a bear, and bayed about means the enemies are like the howling dogs. So he's making a reference to that Elizabethan sport which used to be played. Okay. Now, before I end, I just want to tell you now, what is your impression about Antony from this particular scene? Now, Antony obviously comes across as someone who is a straight talker. He doesn't mince words out here. So he's a very pragmatic kind of a person. Please keep noting down these words. And he's willing to do whatever it takes in order to achieve his goals. And his goal is very clear, that he needs to take revenge for Caesar's death. Okay. So he's making this rather ruthless list, where he's going to say that 1, 2, 3, 4 people, all these people deserve to be killed. They need to be eliminated. Okay. But he's being democratic, because he's asking, it would seem on the outside that he's being democratic when asking opinion from the other two guys. But the real reason is what I have explained, because he wants that burden of guilt to be on the conscience of Lepidus instead of being on Antony's conscience. So his comments about Lepidus, one, reveal his political astuteness. He realizes what are the weaknesses of Lepidus, and he's also a little arrogant and condescending in the manner in which he looks down at Lepidus. He compares him with his donkey, with his horse, and basically dismisses him as an empty-headed follower. But at the same time, when it comes to military strategy, he says that let's immediately confront Brutus and Cassius. He's cooperating with Octavius, but that his comments on Lepidus are some kind of a red flag. You realize, can I trust this Antony? He came across as a nice guy in Act 3, Scene 2, but can I really trust him? This scene kind of makes us a little alert about Mark Antony, about the kind of person he is. He comes across as a slightly dangerous character. There are shades of gray as far as his character is concerned, right? So with this, we come to the end of Act 4, Scene 1. I hope you have understood it thoroughly. It's a short scene. However, it's an important scene because of the reasons that I mentioned. Okay, so now I will see you in Act 4, Scene 2, when Brutus and Cassius will meet. That's again the beginning of the other side, the enemy camp, how they are preparing. So we will kind of keep going back and forth between the two enemy camps to understand how the two camps are preparing for the big battle. Okay, tata, bye-bye. Share the video with your classmates and friends and subscribe to the channel.